Wolfram, and all the others whom we don't know yet. That's very cool. And we've got a lot of new faces here as well that we're just about to meet. So we'll just give the others a minute to join us as well.
Maybe a small warning for everyone. You might remember we had a problem with spammers in our last meetup. So if this happens again, we decided to stop it at that moment that happens. We realize it. And then all together, we will fish the spammer, report it, and then if possible, then we carry on.
Yeah. But we also took all kind of risk mitigation possible from a technical side. So let's just hope for the best. And I'll just clear the waiting room. So get yourself comfortable. And we're going to share the link to our board in a second. And we can already see who's here and where you're coming from. So let's get that started. A lot of more folks popping in. So I'm just going to post the link to our Miro here. And then in the Miro, you find a big map. And would love for you to place a little flag where you're coming from today. So for those of you just joining, just posted the link to the Miro board. We'll do that again in a second. We've got a little map here on the left side. Would love to learn more about where everyone else is from today.
Not necessarily where you are from originally, but where you are joining us from.
Yes, thanks for that clarification. Oh, we still got a lot of people joining, and let's just give it a final minute. And here is the link to our Miro board again for those who just joined.
So what do we see? We see lots of people from Europe.
Yes, definitely. The majority.
Yes. One person from Canada. What time is it in Canada?
It's 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock, all right. 9 p.m. a.m.
AM.
AM, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
6 o'clock on the West Coast.
Nice.
So kind of
such eager people joining us so early in the morning for an OKR session.
Wonderful. So I guess waiting room has cleared for now. Should we get started? And then we can always have a couple more people in here.
Sure.
Wonderful. So I would say a very warm welcome to our yearly OKR Open Space. This has actually become a little tradition now. We're doing this the 4th time already. And we're always really looking forward to meeting with fellow OKR practitioners from all around the world to share some insights, but then to also learn a lot from each other about what current OKR practices are out there, what your experiences are like. And I'm very, very happy to not be here alone. By the way, my name is Natalia Hedesö, and I'm here with my co-host, Chancel Surgens. Chancel, you want to introduce yourself to the community as well?
Hi, everyone. Here's Chancel. I'm your co-host, your fellow OKR coach, and hosting this OKR Open Space with Natalia.
Wonderful. And so we've got, of course, a little agenda prep for you. You already saw that in the invite. For those of you who just joined, because I saw a couple of faces just joined a minute ago, here's the link to our Miro board again, the one that we will be using today. And so we just got started kind of on the map where everyone is joining us from. We've got at least 2 people joining us for their very early or not so early breakfast from Canada. Very warm welcome there. I see we also got a flag pinned down in South Korea. I guess that is kind of the other end of the scale. It's more kind of an evening session for you, or maybe even half night. So very warm welcome to the other side of the world as well. Got people joining from Northern Europe, Central Europe, all the way over to Ireland. So I'm looking forward to many, many different perspectives on this wonderful topic of OKRs. So maybe quick run through what we have prepared for you before we introduce ourselves a little more and dive into the content. So in the board, you basically already see the structure. So what we're going to do with you today is after we finish our little welcome, we can always engage in some networking. We prepared a space for you here on top where you can copy paste your LinkedIn profile or other contact details to connect with fellow OKR practitioners. And then we're going to kick off this session, which is kind of under the motto of OKR fails. So kind of looking at what went wrong in organizations or what goes wrong in organizations and what we can learn from that to maybe make it better next time, or don't even fall into the typical pitfalls that others have already experienced. And so we're going to kick it off with two little stories, one about how not to implement OKRs that I will present to you with a little Q&A afterwards, and one about OKR architecture gone wrong that Chancel will bring us from her experience. And then we're going to move into the open space part. Chancel will also introduce you to the open space very quickly if you haven't been in one before, but don't worry, that's not as hard as it sounds. But we're going to collect different sessions, listen to what interests you today, what is most important to you, then divide the sessions into different rooms. And then you will have the opportunity to join one or maybe even two sessions if you want to move from one to the other to learn more about different OKR practices. And then we're going to come all together in this room again for key learnings and closing, and we'll be done by 5 o'clock. So it's kind of, yeah, up for an interactive input session that, of course, lives from your input, your questions, your engagement, your interaction. And we're really looking forward to doing that. Maybe quick introduction, what our perspective is on the topics. Chancel, you want to do that now or before your talk? To tell us a little more about your background.
Well, we see, Natalia and I had a keynote shared last year, if you remember, about the 10 trends of OKRs, what negative trends we see and what positive trends we see. And we decided to deep dive into these topics a little bit more to get a little bit more understanding of what we mean by that. Today we decided to, first of all, start with the mistakes, the fails we see in the first steps in the implementation phase. And in the second part, I'm going to uncover the myth of OKR architecture, sort of. I'll talk about this, that there are many other options we can work with. This is our topic today, let's say, and we are of course looking forward to your fail stories, to your experiences. What mistakes have you experienced? What fails have you experienced? And what are your lessons out of it? So you can prepare yourselves already mentally if you want to offer a session, that the session topics can be in that direction, that you say, this is how I did, and then we saw that it's not working well, and we changed it that way, and we saw lots of good results afterwards. So that would be a good session opportunity for you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for kind of setting the scene. And before we get started, we would of course love to know a little more about you guys, because I mean, you're kind of the audience here. So I opened a quick poll where you can just indicate how much you already know about OKRs and what your current role is. That makes it easier for us to maybe also tailor what we've been talking about a little more to your needs, but also gives you and everyone else an overview of who's here and what kind of, the level of knowledge, the perspective is that we're looking at OKRs from. So I see the first results coming in. Let's give everyone a minute to pick their 2 boxes. And just pick the one that is closest to how you would describe your position, because there might be overlaying ones. So I see most of you have already answered. For some might not work with the poll if you join through a browser or something like that. Yeah, and of course we can share the mirror link. Yeah, no, Zoom updates are a thing these days again when you restart that. So I guess we've got most of the answers now. Then let's just share that. So who's here today? Oh, I guess we got a quite experienced audience today. So no total newbies. Some of you have heard about that before, obviously, but most of you have already started to experiment with your teams or have even quite extensive knowledge. So I'm really looking forward then to your perspectives and your stories. And we've got a pretty even mix of internal, external people with people management roles or product roles. So looking forward to getting these perspectives into the discussion then as well. All right. Anything else I missed before we get started, Chancel?
I don't think so. Let's start.
All right. Then I would say we're good to go. And let's take a look at the OKR implementations. And for that, I would like to share something with you. Let me just get that started. And I would like to, imagine yourselves in the shoes of a different person. And this different person today that you're going to meet in my story and that you can put yourself into his shoes is George. Who is George? Well, George is the new head of IT product and business development in an IT consulting firm that has grown up to 200 employees. It's kind of one of these typical SMEs that has built up steadily over the last 10 years with a functional setup. And in his free time, he loves running. He's all into smart home technology. And he also started to develop quite an interest into agility and all topics agile. I don't know if you're a George yourself or if you know a George or if you're maybe even working for a George, but I guess you maybe have a picture and can imagine running around in his shoes a little bit. So what did George encounter now when he started on his OKR journey? Well, let's see, and let's travel back in time a little bit. So when he started his new position, he talked to many different employees, of course, had a lot of conversations, observed all the processes. And after a couple of months, he kind of came to the conclusion that he really thinks that this company is lacking a little focus. They're doing way too many things at once. And he doesn't really see that people work in the same direction. And also, given that, he's pretty new to the topic and to the company, he would really also like a little more overview of what they're actually going to do, right? So kind of a transparency issue, so to speak. And then he stumbled across OKRs, right? Went to a conference, he talked to a couple people. I mean, these days OKRs are kind of all over the place. He read a book, he read a couple articles, and he was like, you know what? I really think OKRs will help us. So I should discuss with my management team how to implement them, put together a rollout plan and get this going, because so many other companies have started with OKRs, have had great results. At least that's what they tell me. That's what they present everywhere. So let's get this going. 6 months later, I think we really need to get started on that. Maybe that sounds familiar. I don't know if you've ever been in that position, but he thought about then maybe it would be really good to also have some help, because actually we really have zero time to do that, right? He tried to put that on the management team agenda twice. They didn't really have a time slot for that, so it didn't really happen anything. So he looked out into the social media and how you recruit people these days, talked to a couple of different OKR coaches, and had a very, very clear prompt saying, okay, we want to implement OKRs because I think it's great. So can you help us do that? Actually, it's become really urgent now. AKA, we haven't done anything for the last 6 months. So can you just send us a rollout plan? Then we want to get started on this thing called OKRs, right? Unfortunately, after sending in a lot of concepts and researching a lot of concepts, the feedback that the OKR coaches got was, well, we discussed it again in the management team, and we're not totally sure yet how to do that. We kind of need to rediscuss how to roll them out exactly, and we will come back to you. You can probably imagine what happens next, right? And I don't know if that process sounds familiar. Unfortunately, I've seen that quite a bit happening over the last, especially 1 or 2 years, that 12 months later, we still have a problem. We're still lacking focus, but we moved very, very far away from that problem. So the result is actually that we don't really have a better understanding of the problem. So George is still struggling that people are not really working in the same direction. We don't really have a solution for the problem, but also we have already invested quite some time and resources on theoretical planning, of thinking about potential implementation scenarios, of maybe even discussing risks and reasons against and all that, of something that we don't even really understand. And normally what also then sets in is a bit of frustration when it comes to this new methodology, this new framework. And by the way, I would say this is the perfect scenario to actually kill something before you even get started. Unfortunately, that's the case in many, many organizations that want to start working with OKRs. But that's one way to do that, especially if you come from a rather traditional view. What could then be an alternative way to look at even the first steps before you even get started with OKR? From my point of view, it all starts with a solid understanding of the problem actually to solve. And I think this is the most underrated point in the entire process, to really understand what is it actually that you're struggling with, because you might even find out that OKR is not a good fit. You might find out that you're struggling with something completely different. So why even waste your time and resources into figuring out something that might not solve your problem? But even if that is the case, I think creating a solid understanding and a shared understanding of OKRs and a hypothesis on how it could support and help solving the problem first before making a decision, especially for the entire organization, and a decision on how to use that is really crucial. So what I often see happening to people like George is that they come across OKR and they immediately jump to the implementation, at least in their heads, of the entire organization. So then, of course, that adds a huge level of complexity, and it's not easy to make a decision for or against actually implementing OKRs for the entire organization. So that's where different perspectives and a different approach comes into play. I've had very, very good experiences with actually involving stakeholders and employees in the very early decision-making process. So where you would normally keep that behind closed doors in a management team to weigh risks and assess how you want to get started about that. We, for example, took a very different approach at one of my clients. We organized a one-day workshop. We invited people from all kinds of different departments who would be influenced by the decision of working with OKRs. We kind of got a shared understanding, and then we took that as a foundation into the decision-making process. All the different employees gave feedback on where they see risks, where they see potential benefits, how they view that from their point of view. And this used the management team as a foundation to then make a decision for even the first step. So of course, you could argue that you would invest more time in the beginning, but I think it's actually worth it compared to what it would actually entail in the entire organization to work with OKRs. And this is where also, from my point of view, a certain type of mindset comes into play. What I see happening a lot with people like George is that they kind of assume they know how it all works and don't really put themselves back into the beginner's mindset when it comes to OKRs. And of course, it's also, from looking at it from the outside, the idea is very easy, and a lot of companies out there present OKRs in a very easy fashion, which is not, I would say, a bad idea per se, but I think it kind of undermines a little the complexity that is behind that. And I think we should go back into also trusting management teams to actually deal with that level of complexity before they make a decision, instead of just convincing them to try it super easy at first and then being very surprised about the level of complexity later. And speaking of trying, starting practical, I think, is key as well, because I don't think you can theoretically discuss OKRs and an OKR implementation before you as a person or as a management team actually have a feel of what it means to work with OKR. So just by reading and thinking about it, it doesn't solve any problem and doesn't really give you a hit. So kind of coming back to starting small, I think everything that we know from agile practices, that we know from agile change practices. And overall, I would say investing in a conscious decision-making at the beginning, potentially supported by an expert, might be really worth, because one feedback that I once got that really stuck with me was, after such an initial workshop, was that saying, we would have started with OKR somehow, basically based on what we know so far, but with the knowledge that we have now, we had made a very different decision that set us up differently than for the next couple of steps. Of course, you could argue that they would have learned differently as well if they would have started coming from their position. But I'm not sure if it's always worth it kind of starting somehow and then gaining a lot more knowledge when it's already out there. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean that, you need to invest a lot of time and resources in the beginning into building a certain level of knowledge, but I think it's worth, at least from a management point of view, to dive into the complexity that still is OKR before making huge decisions. That being said, if we put ourselves back into the shoes of George, and he might have had a certain level of learning experience. Maybe he's got some colleagues who convinced him to try it out. Or maybe he even came across people in his organization, which, by the way, is often the case if you start to ask around, that there are also sort of experiments with OKRs already going on that you don't know about. And they got started with OKRs. When he then at a conference met a fellow colleague, he was very proud to tell him about, well, now we're at IT & Co. We actually got started with OKRs and we designed a great OKR system. So the way that we work with OKR. And basically what he would present is they implemented OKRs for everyone in 6 months. He was very proud of that. And we've got a system that works for us okay ever since. So basically what they built is a one-stop shop OKR system. So what does that mean? Look at it if it sounds familiar, maybe also for your organization and your context. So they built something along the lines saying, let's implement OKRs for every existing team, because I believe they can all benefit from that. So we just go back to the initial rollout plan idea and get every team on board. We will do some quick introduction as a foundation, because people, of course, they need to know what OKR is, but they don't need any in-depth knowledge or information. And then let's set up an alignment process, because we also understood from the OKR initiative, or from everything we read about that we somehow need to get these things together. But let's put them as part of our management routines. We already got all kinds of sorts of meetings, so we've got time saved. Yeah, very good point. And of course, we did question if we need all of the rituals. I know we had that discussion already with Agile. You know how that went. So let's not invest too much time into the process, but let's rather focus on the execution. And so that's kind of the way that they built an OKR system that, when you ask them, works for everyone, right? The feedback is okay. Some people are maybe complaining that it's a little too much bureaucracy still, but overall, they're kind of happy with the process. And when he told that to his fellow colleague from another IT company, he was really surprised, because they took a very, very different approach. They said, well, no, we totally understood that we have to be very agile when it comes to OKR implementation, right? So we kind of have the 27th version of our OKR system, and we're still not sure if that now works, but we are agile, so it's kind of all good, right? So we continuously iterated, so that is kind of the right approach. So what they basically did is they tended to the other extreme. So they became kind of super agile, saying, okay, they tried team OKRs for one cycle. People were not happy, did not really work for us. So we said, let's call it a day. We tried company OKRs. That was great, because now we've got the general direction that we wanted to establish, but we didn't really like it, and we had to do that so often. So we kind of now dialed it down to 6-month OKRs, right? And then, of course, coming back to the actual cycle, yeah, we tried that too, you know, in IT, they were okay with that, but then we tried it in marketing. They didn't really like it that much. So now we do check-ins every 4 weeks, and we kind of skip the reflections. That works great. But of course, now we've got the process reflection coming up, so we might change direction again. What do we see here? And it sounds funny when you talk about it in these extremes, but unfortunately, that's kind of the two typical cases that I often see when I interview potential clients for the first time, that either you just take what you have and you do kind of, or set up a minimal OKR system, or you go to the other extreme saying iterative planning or iterative adaptation for us means that we constantly change direction. Unfortunately, in both cases, what you normally do is you invest a lot of time and resources into something that, first of all, has very little relation potentially to your problem, and that doesn't really bring you kind of the necessary outcome or the effect that you're actually after. So how do you then though balance the at least felt need for a clear path and a direction to get started that does relate to your current environment with the obvious complexity of an OKR system and the necessary iteration and relations? And that, of course, ties back to what we potentially, since a lot of you are already quite experienced, know from the OKR principles, which is creating a why to get started. And I know I say that in most of my talks, and I try to kind of repeat that over and over again, but because I find it really so crucial. As long as you don't know which problem you tackle and what is the major achievement that you want to achieve with OKRs, it's really hard to make a conscious and good decision for your OKR system. Because there is a difference if you mainly want to tackle a lack of focus, if you want to improve your alignment, if it's more about value creation, if it's more about strategy execution, about cross-functional collaboration, or something completely different. So this kind of direction matters, and the clearer path you have aligned here with your OKR why, the easier it will be to then choose between the different variations and also avoid to tend to one extreme or the other. Second point is inspect and adapting the system after every cycle. To me, that does not mean that you change the entire direction, but it's rather you make a decision for one direction, you try it out, but you also allow it some time and room to breathe to actually develop into something that can actually work. So when you look into your OKR systems, if you have them already in place, how often did you change certain variables? Is it like almost never, or is it like every cycle? Maybe something in between could actually be something that is, that brings a little more clarity and a little more peace into the system while still being able to adapt it for the greater good. And so implementing OKRs is really not just a change endeavor, but a complex change endeavor. So I think it's important to treat it accordingly. And complex endeavor cannot, of course, be treated like something that you set up once and you never change, but you will also not be helpful to treat complexity in a way that you constantly change direction and just make people go crazy about the process. Right? So embracing the unknown in the beginning, yes, but still balancing that with a clear direction for your path as well, that you have certain levels of orientation points also for people. Because what often happens in the second case that I showed you is that people don't even know what the current reference point is, right? When I interview them, then they tell me, we've got team OKRs. No, wait, but now we didn't know. I'm not sure, there's a Confluence page about that somewhere. I'll look it up before the meeting. And I mean, that's not kind of the level of foundation you actually want to have for your implementation. You want to have a simple process where people actually know what the reference points are and also why you made certain changes in the way that you made them. And what I already said, really give it time. It's normal that it doesn't work smoothly after 3 months. It's normal that these things need a certain level of practice and a certain amount of iterations before they develop into something that you can actually benefit. Should you wait for 2 years? Of course not. But I think more than one cycle to try out an entirely new system is key to also making it sustainably fit for your organization. And bringing in different perspectives before you make major changes. I often see that major changes in the OKR system is mainly based on a management decision and not really a variable and also a different reflection process where perspectives from different, either departments or just different people or positions in the organization had a voice that they could share around the process and also the implications of a potential change, because also there, I think you always have to weigh both sides. So overall, of course, inspecting and adapting the OKR system continuously. And if you already have an OKR system, what I want to end with, just as an impulse to get us started, is couple of questions that I like to use when people have already introduced OKRs or any type of goal architecture, actually. And that is this one. So if you want to reflect on where you currently stand, and if you have the answers to balance the complexity and the need for direction, I always like to really pin down, do you know what the purpose of this artifact is that you're creating, of OKRs, of midterm goals, or whatever you have out there? Who is this relevant for, and which problem is it related to? Would you already have an answer to that? Where does it fit in the overall architecture and timeline? So what is the relation to other artifacts out there? What is the bigger picture of things? What data and also whose assessment is used as a foundation? So where does the content come from? Who do we ask for input? Who does maybe even approve what we then share? What does it contain? So what is out of scope? What is in of scope? How would we phrase that? So kind of also have that distinction clear. How would you describe the format? And what is then the update process? Is that something that we do once and forget about, no matter if it's on strategic or OKR or other goal level? But who is this created with, and how, in which cadence is it updated? Where do we document it, and so on? And I believe these 7 questions already, or these 6 questions already gives you a good hint of where you might have certain areas to tackle in order to not just implement OKR in a good way, because I always use them also when customers are totally new to OKRs. As long as you don't have even an answer to these questions, you should maybe go back to the start and reiterate from there. So overall, what I would like to say is, when it comes to OKR implementation, what you can learn from companies that really struggle with that is, instead of going into the extremes, take a series of conscious, balanced resolution when it comes to OKR implementation. So try to make conscious, informed decisions early on by investing just enough time at the beginning of your journey to really understand the complexity of OKRs, and then break it down into small, practical, iterative steps, not the other way around. Gain clarity on your artifacts and the connections in the bigger picture and why you want to create them. And then aim for courageous evolution instead of tending to the extremes. So implementing OKRs is a big change, treat it as such, but don't fall into the trap of either control by total planning or tending to super agility just for the sake of iterating. So far, just a little impulse regarding OKR implementation. Any immediate questions or comments? We have a couple minutes for that before we jump into the lovely topic of OKR architecture. Anything that's currently on your mind? Or any experience that popped into your head when you were thinking about your own Georges? Not for now. Then I would say I'll hand over to my fellow colleague, Chancel, and let's learn a little more about typical fails around OKR architecture.
Thank you very much, Natalia. I'm going to share my screen also. Give me a second. Everyone who just joined us, welcome to OKR Open Sales, by the way. We do that once a year, so you are in the right organization, in the right event if you are looking for OKR impulses or OKR insights. My name is Chancel. I work as OKR coach. I managed agile transformations, and I work in product management for over 15 years in the meanwhile. And since for over 6 years now, I've been guiding many different organizations in their OKR journeys. And I want to tell you a story in what I see, what I observe in these many organizations. So most of the clients come to me and say, Chancel, you know what? We did OKRs, we started with it, but they think it's overhead. It's meaningless. People are not really happy with the OKR process. What do we do wrong? Then I ask them first, like Natalia just said, be aware of the problem, what you want to solve with OKRs. What's the problem you want to solve with OKRs? Most of the organizations, 90%, as this survey shows, says they want to create alignment with strategy and vision. Now, this client also has the same urge to create alignment with vision and strategy. Then I say, okay, if this is the reason you do OKRs, show me how you do it. What I see is, first of all, this type of very typical, unfortunately, cascading OKRs from levels, from company level to department level to teams. first the company needs to write OKRs, then the departments need to write OKRs, then the teams, and so on. And this is a very typical cascading OKR, which we don't have to do. I'm just warning you now. Another type of OKR, what I see is, I call them in OKRs from hell, by the way, is the inherited cascading OKRs. So what they do is copying the key result from upper level as objective for the next level. This is no go. Please don't do that, even if it's written in a very famous book. As next, what I see is in the same part, because they do this level cascading OKRs, of course, they copy their organigram chart, their org chart, right? And the org chart is not the reality how the teams actually work. What we have at the end are these interdependent OKR teams. They can't finish their OKRs on their own because they are interdependent from other teams to deliver something so they can finish their OKRs. We have a jungle. Then other thing is, because the departments just don't align and just create their OKRs derived from the company OKRs, they actually create kind of silos without even knowing it, without being aware of that, because they actually aimed for alignment and they do everything on the contrary. Now, what we get if we have these type of OKRs, or if we have this kind of architecture, what they report to me is, teams say, we have no room for ideas. We just need to do what the upper level tells us to do. So we just do it, even though we think it's maybe not useful, or we could even have better ideas, but we don't have room for that. Another thing is happening because of this dependency. They spend tons of hours in sync meetings in order to create this dependency map, in order to create kind of a transparency. What do we need from other team to finish our OKRs? Hours of lost time. And with the silos, we have priority conflicts, right? The product team does an OKR while the marketing team is working in a totally different campaign, while the product team would have needed the resources of the marketing team to collaborate with them to market a new product or a new service, for example. But because they are not aligned in that part, they have priority conflicts and they say, okay, we couldn't market. We have a product, but we couldn't market it. So it's not an end-to-end designed OKRs. A part of that, we wanted to have alignment with vision and strategy, right? Now we have high administration and we have unfinished lots of initiatives. The board is full of initiatives we started, but we couldn't finish. So it's not really ideal, this situation. Besides, the other, if you remember the survey I just showed you, another elements are like, we want to have growth. We want to have employee engagement, increase the employee engagement. And we see exactly the contrary happening there, right? The employees are frustrated. They are not motivated. They can't bring their ideas. And the company goals are not achieved because nobody is actually aligned at the end, right? They just have a neat, nice structure maybe when you look at the picture, when you open it in the picture in a tool or so, but they are not aligned indeed. They are not strategically aligned. So what's the strategy in that case? I ask. If you want to align the strategy with vision, if you want to have an alignment there, can you tell me your strategic priority? What the client says is many voices. My brain blasts at the end when I hear them saying lots of different directions. And indeed, another survey shows that the lower you go in the levels in the organizations, the lower knowledge they have about the strategic priorities, right? So we need to fix that first, actually, before an OKR. Cascading OKR is obviously not the solution for that. And indeed, many of those organizations who started with OKRs, wanting alignment with strategy and vision, say, if we would start it again from the beginning, we would definitely invest a little bit more time to have a clear vision and strategy, right? So let's do that. Let's learn from the mistakes and let's do that and create a directional strategic focus to align the short-term OKRs. How do we do that? We need to be clear about the big picture here. We have a company vision and we have our initiatives projects. We are really good at that in the meanwhile, having good ideas, having good initiatives. Now we start with OKRs, but as you see, we have a vision and then we have the OKRs for 3 to 4 months. The space between there is huge. So we need to get a clear alignment on the strategic level for a midterm time, like 12 to 18 months. And I name it midterm strategic goal. We name it midterm goal. So this strategic goal should answer the question, where do we play and how do we win? What is the strategic focus actually we want to get into in the next 12 to 18 months? Once we have this, then around this midterm strategic goal, we can create dynamic networks. We don't need to cascade. You don't need to dictate the people what to do now, because you give them a direction. You give them an orientation. You tell them clearly what you want to achieve strategically. What's your strategy behind it to win the market, to win the new customers, and so on, right? So we can build dynamic networks. What do I mean with that? We don't cascade, build dynamic networks around the midterm strategic goal. We can do a team, just a team, any team you have in your organization simply can contribute to this midterm strategic goal. They don't need to wait for any other upper levels to create ideas in order to contribute to that midterm goal, right? Be aware of that. Then we have, of course, departments, functions like product development, like marketing. Of course, they can create their OKRs directly contributing into that midterm strategic goal. But it doesn't necessarily mean that every single OKR product team needs to create OKRs. Not necessarily. If they have a clear alignment around the product OKR, maybe it's enough for them just to align towards that and say, okay, we create our backlog towards that product OKR. You don't need to have every team doing OKRs. Please leave them free to decide if they want to do it or not. Another thing is the enabler teams. I hear that a lot, right? We have enabler teams. They don't have the direct connection to the customer. It's difficult for them to measure the outcomes and so on. Yes, of course, but their customers are internal product teams maybe. So they can, ask the product teams, what do you need? How can I help you in order for you to work towards that midterm goal? So indirectly, as an enabled team, I'm also working towards that midterm goal, right? Another thing is, so the shared OKR is a very nice feature introduced by Felipe Castro back then, and which I unfortunately not see that common, not that often in use, which is actually great to break these silos. So why not let marketing and product team come together and create together an OKR set? So maybe you don't even need marketing or product team alone to create an OKR, but rather have a shared OKR together and they can work it out, right? Maybe marketing owns one key result, product team the other one, or they share a key result together and write their initiatives accordingly. Also, everything is possible. Another thing is, which is kind of, I don't know, I haven't seen from anyone else doing that, but this is something I observed in many organizations having this urge. So I suggested working with that with some of my clients, and I call them now strategic theme OKRs. So this is probably something totally new for everyone here, or for many of you at least. The strategic theme OKRs, I saw in many companies that they have actually a problem with the cross-divisional alignment. It's not necessarily the cross-team alignment, right? We can cope with that by saying we can have shared OKRs, or we have a product OKR overlaying that the teams can align towards that. But what about if we work with many divisions to create something new, right? There are some topics that are not just like obvious that we have dedicated teams to work on that. So, and these strategic themes can vary. They are dynamically changing depending on the midterm strategic goal. That's why I change the direction of the arrow here, because these themes are derived from the midterm goal in that case, right? And what do we do with these strategic themes is creating dynamic teams. So we have maybe a core team who's coming together to work on that topic. And depending on the stage of this topic, depending how far we are in the development of this topic, we can add new team members, we can reshape the team collaboration and so on. So this gives us this kind of responding to the urges of the organizations they have right now, because the organization chart is not helping us to do that, right? Because the organization chart is not aware how do we collaborate actually in order to create these kind of cross-divisional topics. So I have really good experience with this kind of strategic themes with many of my clients, had many good results. I'm just checking the time. Maybe I just show you one slide, how I did with one client. They had the midterm goal on the company level, right? And one of the strategic themes were that they had external service technicians on the field. They don't work for the company, but they go to the customers to install their products, right? So they are actually the first phase to the clients, to the customers of the company itself. And they play a huge role when it comes to the image of the company, of course, in that case, because the end customer is not aware of if this person works actually for that company I bought the product from, or if they work from somewhere else. We as end customer, we don't do the realization of that. We don't differentiate between them. So they said, it's a really huge topic for us. We need to do something here. We need to create an environment that these external employees, external workers, identify themselves with our brand. So they treat our customers even better in the field when they install our products, for example, right? This is kind of a differentiation they want to create. As you see, we don't have any dedicated teams for that. That's a totally new topic. You don't know how to work on that. You can't say just one team is responsible for that. You need many teams to work on that topic. It's a really holistic topic indeed. Now, what we did is I invited the leadership team who is working closely to this kind of strategic theme, and we did with them together this midterm goal. What would be focusing on in the next 12 months? And we created like 3 focus areas out of this: sense of belonging, working conditions, improving these conditions, and enabling capabilities with technologies and so on, for example, so with software or whatever. So what we did is to create an announcement who would like to work in that topic, looking for voluntaries, because we don't know, right? We want to see people getting engaged with this topic. Maybe even from the field, people can get involved in this topic. So we created an announcement, said this is our topic. We need people from that direction with these skills, and we are going to do that with OKRs. So we created teams. Teams came to that. People came to that topic. Not that we assigned this topic to the people. People came to that topic voluntarily. And they started working on that. Each team came together. We wrote their OKRs and so on. They started the OKR stage. As a totally dynamic, mixed, new team collaborating cross-divisionally. And the good thing is, out of this story, a really interesting thing came out. Just one. I'm going to show you just one example out of it. That they said, we want to create a sincere bond with the people, right? How can we do that? How can we create that bond that they hear their stories, they start becoming a community of technicians of our brand, for example. And one team came up with the idea of creating a company radio, and they started broadcasting stories from these technicians. Technicians are invited to this radio program to tell their stories and so on, right? So this idea would have never be possible to come up with if we didn't do this strategic theme type of OKRs, if we didn't collaborate cross-divisionally, if we didn't invite people who was interested to work on that topic, right? So this was a really huge success. And I just had my latest reviews with these teams yesterday, and they are still saying, Jansel, if we wouldn't have done this way, the OKRs, but rather the cascading way as we were intended to do, we would have not been possible to create that kind of company-wide alignment, to create that understanding, the value of each department, who's doing for what, who brings which value to that company. So this created a really interesting dynamic in the whole company that way, right? Not only the results, but also the side effects of it is quite huge, which I was almost crying out of happiness, because it was really great to see this development of the teams. They came together, they formed a team. It was difficult at the beginning, but with the time, with each cycle, they became better and better in what they were doing. So this is my story of my strategic themes. If you want to try it out, get in touch, or if you want to copy paste it, feel free to do it. I can just tell you that it's a great experience to do OKRs actually, instead of cascading OKRs. So maybe a short recap. Cascading goals are just slowing us down. They hinder motivation and creativity, and a clear strategic goal can create flexible yet structured system. So why not try it? Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks a lot, Jansel. So let's get into timeline. Any immediate questions? We've got maybe room for one. Or we could also do a deep dive in one of the sessions. That's of course also always an opportunity. But I can also just, confirm what Jansel just said. Experimenting with deep type of OKR architectures brings really, really great results. And maybe just a quick addition for those of you who said, let's try it out, but how does it then evolve over time? I'm sure Jansel has a lot more to tell about that as well.
Oh, yes. For this, we have to meet up in June.
Exactly.
Yes.
And we can dive into, okay, how do we then build from that? What kind of experience do we both have in order to then bring that forward? So feel free to, mark your calendars for that already. Good. I would say these two impulses,
I think there's a question, Natalia.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, can you hear me well?
I can hear you.
Okay. I see you're mentioning strategic themes for OKR, and I know there is the same concept in portfolio management. Is it similar meaning, or is there a big difference between them?
Under portfolio management, I understand something different as you might probably, so I'm not sure if I can answer the question.
I mean, agile portfolio management, I don't know if that's just, are we referring to the same?
Well, portfolio, I worked as portfolio management. This is actually the time back in 2016 when I came across to OKRs first. In portfolio management, what we do is making sure that we have the right topics and we are working on the right topics and so on, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a different type of organization, let's say, what we do with portfolio management. With OKRs, we indeed create teams to work on that, collaborate on these topics. And maybe one team just needs 3 months while the other teams work for next 12 months. And maybe one team starts with 4 and ends with 6, 7 people and so on. This is a really dynamic situation, what I'm talking about. So it is the actual work we do for these strategic topics, instead of having the portfolio ready and having a transparency, what do we do for what, to which value stream and so on. So I see that a little bit differently here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
I may add just a non-product person view on that. From my point, when you talk about strategic themes, that covers kind of all potential topics, right? So it's not limited to the product part of your organization or the part that you would maybe kind of, also manage with a portfolio, but it can also be an organizational development topic, an HR topic, a topic about hybrid working, the one that you mentioned about the technician. So it can be kind of any type of strategic topic as closely or as not closely related to your actual product or not. So I think it's kind of from my point of view, from an outsider point of view, a lot broader than what you would maybe use the term for in a portfolio management sense.
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you.
And
Alex.
second question, let's tackle that.
Can you hear my voice?
Yeah.
Yeah. You talked about how good these strategic team OKRs, but I want to hear about the cons, or the bad bit when you do this kind of strategic team OKR.
There are, of course, I wouldn't say cons, but there are things that we need to be aware of. We need to be careful of, definitely. And if we are aware of those, if we are careful of those things, then it's definitely worth it at the end. So this is the experience I had. And the pretty obvious one is that you have a new team that you need to develop. Right? So you need to be strong in team development. You need to coach them. You need to be next to them. And they need to be committed to bring time to that, because they will have different other topics other than the strategic theme and so on, right? So these are the most obvious ones I can share with. Yeah.
Maybe to add on that, from one of my experiences, goes in the same direction. I think it's crucial to have a clear vision of the team. So I, for example, work with a team mission to begin with. Like if you identify the strategic theme, that you really have clarity. Now, when I bring these people together, what is their actual mission that they're after, to use that as a reference point also to then draft OKRs. Because if you're very fuzzy around that, it will be very hard then for an even new team for a new topic to then come up with really valuable goals for the upcoming 3 months. And the other thing I think that you already briefly mentioned is kind of the dependencies on other things. So one of my clients is trying out a similar approach. What they really struggle most with is to get a grip on the dependencies and the resource allocation, saying, okay, we've tried that out for parts of the organization. We still got the functional teams. Then we've got people working as a consultant for our external clients. Like, how do we get all that together? Or do we maybe at some point also need to make a decision that people are allowed to focus on strategic teams for at least a major part of the resources, instead of trying to do everything at once, kind of the traditional approach and this new approach at the same time in the same architecture. And to find, I think, a balanced approach there is not easy, and you need to find really one that fits your context. And I think there we're back to experimentation and just learning over time what is then necessary in terms of setting that up.
We actually did a similar approach in South Korea. By the way, I'm from South Korea, so and I've been doing OKR performance coaching for about 3 years. And as a consulting firm that does OKR coaching, we do OKR within. And because consultants, they have their own field and companies and clients, we do this strategic team OKR. One of the problem is that it actually forces you to do extra work. And OKR should not be tied to reward. So you're doing extra work, you have to allocate resources to other works that is not compensating for you. So when the obstacle that we faced is that it happens to be it brings up the issue of reward. So we do this extra work, then what do we get as a return?
The results, you see, that's your reward, because you said voluntarily, I want to work on that, and the results you see at the end, because you volunteered for that, because you want to work on that topic, right? It interests you. It interests to see a development in this topic. So this is why being voluntarily working in these teams is rule number 1. And the topic about rewards, I don't want to get into that, because for the sake of the time today, for the open space, in the meetup in June, when we deep dive a little bit more into that topic, we can discuss it then, of course. I still see a hand above from Alex. Maybe one very quick question before we carry on.
Yes, it will be very quick. In your slide with the midterm strategy goal, you have a product OKR and then you have a sub-team OKR. I'm just wondering, you spoke about cascading. Isn't there a chance for cascading in that scenario you're having there on your slide, or how do you see it?
Yeah.
I was just a bit wondering about that.
I don't see it as a necessarily must-do cascading type of OKR in that case, but rather, what do we need as information to align around, right? So if we have more than 2, 3, 5 teams working in one product, what I naturally see in many organizations is that they force every product team to write an OKR, even though they don't have a product OKR, even though they don't have a product strategy or midterm goal. So I would rather go for a product OKR first and then ask the teams, do you want to do an OKR on your own for your part of the product? Or do you want to derive your initiatives from the main product OKR? So it's an optional part of way of working, I would say.
Okay, thanks.
All right, let's move on to our open space part. So you heard our stories. You might have experienced similar stories. I would say, let's go into the Miro boards. Luckily, our Zoom call this time stayed safe from spammers. Exactly. So let's share the link again. Yes. Here, for anyone who came later or lost the link. The links to the meetups we just mentioned, you also find in the Miro board, at the end of the Miro board, in the part about us. You see there are some links to reshaping meetups and to some offerings I and Natalia offer, so you can have a look there. Now, in the open space, the rules are everyone is free to offer a session. We have a limited number of rooms to 12. So we have maximum 12 session offerers. If you want to offer a session, grab a post-it in this area that Natalia is just showing you here in the screen sharing mode. Grab a post-it, write your topic, write your name, what you want to share, and then we are going to start pitching these topics. Then we will create rooms. Once you chose the topic you want to go to, you can go into that breakout session. The breakout sessions will be numbered like 1 to 12. And then you can, start a discussion. You don't need to present anything. It can be an open discussion. You will have also a space to take notes in the session, as session owner or as session participant. Natalia is just showing us the frames for each session. So you can use these frames. And as a participant in a session, feel free to go to another session as soon as you realize that you can't contribute to that session anymore, or you don't get anything out of the session anymore. So feel free to move around. The rooms are open. So we are not assigning you to a room. You can freely walk around depending on what session interests you and in which sessions you want to contribute to. Once the sessions are ready, done, finished, then we will get back together and talk about our takeaways. Maybe we will go through each session and note down one takeaway you have from this session. Maybe the session owners himself, herself, or one of the participants can say something to that. And that's the very basic explanation to open space, a very quick one, so we can save time for the sessions indeed. Now, please feel free to go to Miro board, grab it, first come, first serve, by the way, right? If the 12 slots are finished, then we don't have any slots anymore.
For you to experiment with something that is a little out of your comfort zone, but we would highly like to invite you to do that as well and use the safe space for your next step. We've got first sessions coming in.
It's a safe place. If not here, then you can share these topics, by the way.
All right, the first 3 are out there. Love to have 1 or 2 more.
I'm going to extend the time to 1 minute more. I'm sure we will have more than 4 sessions. We have 30 people in the open space right now, so.
Motivation and
The session
perseverance.
offers get ready to pitch your idea, what your session is about, why people should come to your session.
And
All
let's
right.
limit that to 1 minute per session. And we're kind of good on time for our agenda. So, Chancel, what's the first one?
Alex, please go ahead.
Yes. Well, my topic was to talk about, well, in Agile and Scrum, we work with goals in different levels across teams. And I was just wondering, this is a new OKRs can be a new thing for many organizations, and there maybe can be some colliding. And how do you actually cope with that? How do you work with it? What do you choose? How to choose to implement OKRs when you use product goals, vision goals, maybe? What is the best way to do that? That is what I'm curious about.
Thank you very much for your session.
Yep.
We have only 1 session slot anyway, so I'm moving you to room 1.
Okay.
If you want to go to Alex's session, you need to choose breakout session 1. You don't see them right now. We are going to open them in a second. The second topic is from Dennis.
What do you want to talk about, Dennis? Dennis, can you hear us?
Dennis, you are not muted, but we don't hear you. So there is a problem with your headset.
Hello?
Yeah.
No? Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Oh.
Hi. We are decided that to set OKRs into departments, and we realize, of course, I know that was a mistake, but yeah, we get quite many OKRs with many cross dependencies, and now we're thinking how to how to address it, how to resolve it, maybe use another approach, or maybe work with this. I don't know how.
All right. Then I'm going to move you to session room number 2. If you want to help Dennis with his problem, go to room number 2. The next session is from Richard.
Yes, that's me. The problem is I introduced 2 topics, but I can only talk about one. So
Which one do you prefer?
I think this one.
Oh.
I think every one of us working with OKR knows we always try to get the metric and outcome focused and not output focused. So we do a health metric or a health check in our firm, and we always try to figure out how many actually outcome-based metric key results we have. But I never find a good answer. What's good? What's good enough? So is 40% good? Is 60% good? Is 80% good? So I like to hear what's your feeling on in your companies is, what really good metric outcome-based key results you have. And then, of course, what do you do to get that metric even higher? So what's good metric key results in the ratio, and how to get that metric up?
Great, thank you. You are in room 3. this means we have one more from Natalia.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my problem is very, very similar that Natalia described on the very beginning. From the perspective of external coach, even after the training, the right internal person, internal coach doesn't appear or lose motivation. And from my perspective, I call and I write this company, okay, if you start with OKRs, but they answered, oh, we are preparing. And what we can do with this? Because all of them, they want to implement OKR, but nobody want to take a responsibility to organize all of the things inside the company.
All right. Thank you, Natalia, for the session. You are in room 4. So as far as I see, there are no other sessions. Then we have 4 sessions, which is okay. We are at like 25 people, so it's fine. I'm going to open the breakout sessions now.
And then you can feel free to join either Alex in room number 1, talking about how well product goals and OKRs can live together, or join Dennis into room number 2, talking about how to get out of the weeds with too many OKRs on department levels, or go to Richard in room number 3, talking about a good ratio of metric outcome-based key results, or join Natalia with what you just mentioned. How do we get to take people actual responsibility for the thing that they want to have, but don't want to take over responsibility for in terms of internal coaches? So pick the one that you're most interested in, join the fellow practitioners, get a discussion started, and of course, let us know if you need any assistance or help. We will also jump into the rooms to join you and also, of course, learn from your stories and then bring you back once the session ends at 4:40, so after 25 minutes, and then let's collect takeaways together.
All right, the rooms are open. If you're not familiar with this feature of Zoom, you will find the breakout sessions on
Oh, hi, Martin. Hi, glad to hear you.
Hi, Natalia. Glad to see you.
Okay, if we go to our mirror board, to session 4, I think. Yeah, it's our. I found it. Hi, Esther. How I can pronounce you correctly?
Yes, you pronounced correctly.
Hi, I think I wanted to go in room 3. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Maybe I'll come back.
Okay, can I invite you to those session 4 mirror board section, just to maybe keep some ideas. I can also put the link on our inner chat, the direct link if you are not on the mirror board. Okay, we have 25 minutes and we are five participants. What do you think about this problem? Why are you joining this session, and what do you think about this? You can share your thoughts by the voice, and also you can put your stickers with your ideas or your questions inside. Yeah, please go ahead. Who wants to be first?
Hi, everybody. This is Pınar from Turkey. And I have the same problem with my team, not only team with the company, because we just started to experience OKR this year, but not with all employees from all over the company, but just with the top management team above director level. And now we have a 25 OKR coach, internal OKR coach. We completed the internal training sessions, and then they started working with the departments
but we have the problem to motivate them because they're all busy with their own responsibilities and don't have enough time to focus on department OKRs. And so we have the same issue with our internal OKR coaches. So I'd like to discuss with you all.
Yeah, thank you. And what is the kind of persons you choose in to be an OKR coaches? Are they some agile coaches, scrum masters, just volunteers? Who they are?
A mix of different kind of employees. Some of them also have a agile coach. And some of them just, for example, HRBPs from a HR team, and some of them from a team as a manager. They are deducted to a team. So mixture, I can say that.
Okay,
but they're all volunteer. Yeah, they're all volunteer to become an OKR coach.
What just comes to my mind is from the impulses we just got from the keynotes, it seemed to be very important to have a purpose for why you implement OKRs. So do you guys have purposes for this group of consultants? And also maybe, is there some top management attention on that? Is somebody really interested in implementing the OKRs? And are they held accountable for the process too? Yeah, or is it just a hobby?
Yeah, it's a key point, I think, because we just started specifying the company OKRs, but we have some issues. But I think not all the departments and all the OKR coaches, they are not aligned. So first of all, we need to have an alignment with all the strategy, the problem, and how can they support the OKR process, maybe.
I think that the second keynote we got today could be helpful for you. So in the first place, the architecture, so that where you can see who needs, which teams do really need OKRs. So also these teams need a coach, certainly, or a consultant on the one hand. And also she showed this, these strategic circles from the execution to the purpose. And maybe this should be clear too, yeah, so that somehow this overarching alignment is clear first, and then the targets themselves, the content somehow maybe needs to be aligned too. Unfortunately, I'm a rookie to OKRs, so I'm not the best fit here to give you advice at all. It's just from what I heard from the keynotes today, yeah. So.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting idea. Yeah, I just put your answers and questions on our board. You feel free to also put your stickers. And yeah, who wanted to continue? What do you think about if you also have this problem that we with Spinner have? Or maybe you have some ideas how can solve it. Yeah, thank you, Judith, that you propose of this.
Maybe I can share another question from my side, because we have so many departments and each of OKR coaches supporting one department. Some department managers are open to receive support from OKR coaches, but some of them are not. So do you think that each of the departments do need to have an OKR coach, or they can do we need to leave them alone to act on their own? What do you think about it?
First of all, I think you have to identify whether the team should work with OKRs. So because they just said to us, not everybody necessarily needs OKRs. and also the interest, or if they are maybe just enabling OKRs of others. And I thought that what was really interesting was to create sort of voluntary teams around strategic goals. And this could also be something that could be maybe more motivating also for the internal coaches, that the management teams can give them cross-functional strategic goals that they can sort of hire people for. Like, let me just copy that picture from this keynote and paste it here so that you maybe recognize it. So she said, put a topic there and put people together to work on that. Yeah, so, but voluntary. And this creates maybe more motivation for the coaches as well as for the people involved here. I thought that was a really good idea also to try something out.
Yeah. Motivation is not only important for the OKR coaches, and it's also important for the managers. They need to align with their own self-motivation.
The question is, what do you need to align? Do you need to align the architecture? Yeah, so who has OKRs and how they all connect? Or does it even have to be connected content-wise so that the goals are really broken down, you know? And this is really complicated, especially if you're an HRBP or something, you know? So how do you want to do that? So I maybe just starting small and not connecting the whole hierarchy would be smart, yeah, to make experiments, to make little nutshells where they try it out, and maybe they can have buddy teams, yeah, that they do it together and not maybe just one coach. So I have many ideas here, but honestly, from my experience as an internal facilitator and consultant, the most important thing is the management attention. Somebody needs to want it. Somebody very powerful needs to sponsor such a process and say, I want to see the results here. Yeah, I think someone's powerful, yeah.
So first of all, we need to redesign the architecture. Thank you so much.
Yes.
If I may add a perspective that this just came to mind when you asked that question, Natalia, for the session was, okay, what kind of responsibility are we actually talking about? Because what I often see happening is when companies establish OKR coaches, that they are overloaded with responsibilities, with administrative tasks, with, oh, by the way, then you can do this and you can do that. And by the way, once you're already facilitating the meeting, why don't you also get the lunch and, you know, be the cleaning lady afterwards? So I think it's really important to also make it very clear, what is the actual responsibility we're looking for? Is this one person that should be responsible for all of that? Or can we maybe break it up into different parts? What kind of competency do we then need for that? And also, what is the part of the responsibility that's actually best left in the team? So like, why does the OKR coach have to deal with lunches and workshop rooms, right? Why do they have to deal with the OKR tool and so on? I think same as we often see with the Scrum Masters. And I think the role can be a lot more effective once you make that very clear, and also make it clear for the teams that part of that has still to be your responsibility, right? You don't get an OKR nanny to just take care of you, but it's rather somebody helping you facilitate the process, and that's kind of it. So I think it's a lot also about expectation management and kind of making that role attractive by leaving out kind of the parts that teams just would like to have taken care of, but it's not actually part of the initial role or even maybe helpful in the process.
And also who is the one who communicates it to the teams that they need to have an OKR process? If this is the coach, you have a problem, because then the coach is the one who wants it, yeah, which doesn't make no sense, yeah. So you need rather a management representative to tell them to do it, and the coach is just helping and supporting, yeah. Otherwise, it's really an awkward role, yeah. So
maybe one thing to add that I just came up when you were talking, Judith, is first of all, who's assigning that? And I think that's the worst strategy ever if you just assign that to a team. I think we clarified that. But the other thing is also, from my experience, it really takes a long time if you're not used in an organization to have coach or supporting roles that teams really get up, ask for that kind of support, really see the value in that. It's nothing where you just, oh, by the way, we educated 5 coaches, here they are. And then we just wait for the teams to come up. And if something doesn't happen after 5 minutes, we get really frustrated. I think this is something we also expect to have probably nothing happen for the first 3, 6, or even 9 months, but people need to get used to that kind of collaborative approach, that they feel comfortable asking for support, that they see the value in support. And from my experience, it's a lot better if you let that build up organically rather than just force coaches into the teams to make it kind of worthwhile because you paid for the education. So I would rather take the opposing approach, saying start small with maybe 1 or 2, see how it goes, establish that collaborative approach in your organization, and then maybe build from there instead of the other way around. Yeah, but then I think it's back to this, also give it time. None of these processes are just kind of like done in an instance, right? If you're not used to that way of working together.
And maybe when you have first success stories, you can also advertise it a little bit, for the other teams.
But Natalia, was that already helpful, or what else would you like to discuss with your fellow practitioners?
Yeah, it was very helpful, and thank you also for Pinar to sharing the very similar problem, but from the internal side, very the same. And I would ask to other participants, what are you thinking about this? Are you had the same problem inside the company, outside the company, or maybe you have also ideas in addition of what we're saying, or maybe you just have some insights according to those ideas. I can also share my screen to give you this overview of ideas, and if I was not so precise to write down your ideas, please feel free to correct.
Perfect. So make use of the 10 minutes. I'll see you back in the main room at 40.
Yeah, thank you, Natalia, for your impact. Okay, what do you think about all of these ideas? What maybe other topics around those ideas just pop up?
I was it was really interesting to hear the expression of the OKR nanny, because OKR coach is not really common in Korea setting. OKR is pretty much a new thing. It's introduced 2019, so it's a spreading phase in South Korea, but we as consulting firm, we also offer OKR coach training courses for companies who want to do the OKR by themselves. And those trained coaches also give us some mails and phone calls and speaking about the OKR, the others are not really into the OKR as much as they do. Actually, today I have very interesting thing happening. I am an external coach, but inside the consulting firm, I am an internal coach. And we are consulting firm, but we offer also HR education website. So we have developers and designers, and they also have to set up quarterly OKR. And today, designer and the head of the developing team came to me and asked to coach their first sketch of the third quarter OKR. And they were really it was not forced, they were thirsty for the insight. So I think we have to change the game setting itself. I mean, if you want someone to dig the well, you have to stop giving them water. So make them first for the insight first. Then they will finally seek the help of the OKR coach. Then internal OKR coach have a chance to build some small successes. Coaching is very hard. You don't have the really the success of the team is really up to the team, not the coach. So you have to make the team first for the insight, and not the coach giving them the insight. They will not see the value.
Huh. And I'm curious, from your experience, your personal experience, what kind of value did you receive after those conversations? If you can share.
Actually, their problem was this. The website also has some functions, but the what makes it valuable is the content. But the team is not involved with content or marketing, so they are frustrated. Their UX UI design or the features are not really directly linked to the sales made by this website. So they are curious about how we can make not output-based but outcome-based KR. So I asked about some questions. Where do they get the feedback from customer, or how they view their core competency of the team? And they answered my question, and they kind of came up with their own answers. And just now, the head of the IT team, the developing team, gave me a Starbucks coupon. Sent me a Starbucks coupon. Yeah. So I gave them 15 minutes of my time, and I get like $30 worth Starbucks coupon. So it's very lucrative business.
Yeah, it was my question. Yeah, for a valuable conversation for them, I understand, but for you, but if next team didn't give you any coupon, if your motivation will will be still high, or you will lose your motivation if you don't get reward from the team, or even you get some opposite from the team when they refuse, for example, your advice and do some weird things. What should be with your motivation? What do you think? That's question for all. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the monetary compensation or coupon of something, but the interaction has to be there. Like, I was appreciated by your insight, by your question. Such feedback should be given to the internal coaches. It's the these core or small successes, actually, that is what motivate the internal coaches, also the external coaches. And it should be, it doesn't have to be something really fancy. Just thank you notes on a post-it is good enough for make happy the internal coach for a day.
I wrote down on a blue stickers, what it's thinkers very interesting ideas. Yeah, so appreciation from the team, or maybe some small material things like coupons. Yeah. What else? Maybe we can make some brainstorm. Yeah, what other things can motivate our internal coaches? From my perspective, it's also could be some diagonal growth inside the company when I can have more responsibility and can communicate with the top management, for example, from my position. So when I can participate in the meetings that I couldn't participate before, what do you think? If it could work?
Hi, Natalia.
Yeah.
I didn't hear your question from the start.
Yeah. Hi, Denise. Yeah, glad to see you again. Now we're discussing what kind of thing could motivate our internal OKR coaches. Yeah, and Enoch told us a story about how Tim motivated him by the startup coupons and appreciation. And from my perspective, it's also, I add that it could be maybe some kind of including into more more high management level, maybe conversations and meetings. So some career growth. Maybe we can add some else.
I think it's not really differ from motivation anybody. Of course, for in-strict motivation works better, and when I understand that something wrong with in-strict motivation, I talk with this person. It's quite coaching session. Something about coaching session. Yeah, where I asked this person about his professional goals, and if I heard something connected with current work, for example, OKR implementation, I try to explain him or her how it could be connected. Once in my experience was that the person answered some not honest. yeah, and I asked him about his personal goals, not professional goals, and I understand that his personal goals could be connected with goals of organization, and it was very helpful. His productivity increased, I think, in 20 or 30 times. It was incredible.
Yeah, I just put it down, also write it down on our board. Okay, yeah, thank you for your impact. Thank you for all of you. I just saw, yeah, where all of your thoughts are arranged. You can also add some more stickers if you want. Yeah, and let's see you in the main session room. Thank you everyone who participated on this session and yeah, gave you ideas.
Natalia.
Thank you. Yeah, Pinar, do you know about OKR Summit in Turkey in May 23? Are you participated? Do you know?
No.
In Turkey could be an OKR Summit where Ben Lamort, Paul Niven, and all of OKR celebrities.
Oh yeah, I know this summit. Yeah.
We hope you had great session discussions. And because not everyone was in every session, we want to get a recap from each session. We have in board a frame, it's called Takeaways. Please go to that part. Maybe write down for a couple of minutes your thoughts, your takeaways from the sessions or for the open space in general. And then after a couple of minutes, we will start asking session holders or session participants to share their main key takeaways with the whole group. I will start the timer for like 2 minutes.
2 minutes, yeah. for everyone to gather your thoughts. What do you want to pack in your bag when you leave the session today?
So we take the takeaways space directly, right? We don't do it by sessions, all right?
You can just put it in a takeaway space, yeah.
If you want to, you can mention the session number to make it clear for which session it was.
Oh, you got a lot of takeaways there. So take the final minutes.
If you wrote down your takeaway, you can also already move to the next frame and leave your feedback for this event. What would you like to get improved, tried out next time, and so on? All right, let's hear, what are your takeaways? Maybe session number 1 can start. It can be the session host or one of the participants.
What did you pack from that session?
Anyone?
Well, I can start. It was me that hosted the session. Well, I was a bit curious about how to use OKRs with the product goals and the product visions, and also maybe the PI objectives. And then we had some good talks about how they could live together, and or maybe how it could be changed to in some places uses OKRs instead. Which also, and then we also had to talk about is it really necessary to have OKRs on team levels? It was a really great talk. Yeah.
I love that question. Do we actually need them on a team level? Do we actually need them in our team? I think that's really important. Cool.
Yeah. All right. Shall we move on to session 2?
Sure. So
there was no session 2, right?
Yeah.
The main outcome of session 2, it was not so interesting topic for another person.
Or too challenging, Dennis. maybe you need to hire a coach for that, maybe.
Maybe.
All right, then let's move on to session 3.
Yes, so I think my main takeaways there were that if you have bad, so first of all, no one had a really number what's a good ratio for the number of key results. So I still need that one answered. But for the question on how to get more really good key results, one was that better focus in the objectives and what you define as OKRs also helps with good key results, right? If you only take the topics that are really good for strategy and that belong in the OKR process, you automatically get better key results. Not perfect in all cases, but better key results. And that was one. And then the other one was that one reason why a lot of our key results may not be perfect is not every team is supported by OKR coaches. They only get one basically if they ask for it. And so basically, maybe we need to change that, having them help with the definition. And then the other one was don't start with the initiatives, but always start with the why, and then maybe use some tools like impact mapping to get to really good measurable key results.
Okay.
Great takeaways. Thank you. Let's move on to the last session, session 4, Natalia.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all participants. It was a very interesting conversation, and maybe if we can arrange all the thoughts that we get on our, if you can share our board.
Sure.
So I think it's three main maybe thoughts. The first, the why, the purpose, and connect the internal motivation of the internal coach with this why. So not only teams, but also coaches can understand the purpose of all of this system and why it's important to company to keep the system to be very successful. It's the first why. The second is a clear role of OKR coach, not to be OKR nanny, not to be some person who does everything, and good support from top management. So top management can support OKR coaches to get their work. It's the second. And the third, how internal coaches can understand that they are really needed for teams, how teams can appreciate the impact of OKR coaches, how we can show them the importance of their role. So it's 3 takeaway from my side. Maybe my team can also share their takeaways.
Thanks a lot, Natalia. Anything the others would like to share or add to that? Or any other takeaways that you want to mention?
Similar with Natalia. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Then I guess we got a lot of takeaways already on the board. Feel free to skim through them as well. But I love to see the engagement in the discussions and to everyone that is interested to learn more about OKRs. I think it's really valuable to share and learn from each other. I think we've seen that, for example, in the talk that Chancel gave, but also in the discussion that we just had around the coaches that I visited, that it's important to experiment with things, but then also to trade kind of, secrets and other perspectives and other ways of approaching that with each other. Because I think there's already so much experience around OKRs out there. Unfortunately, many companies still kind of built on, the knowledge or the approaches that were kind of there 5 or even 10 years ago. But I think we are actually a lot further than we think, and we can experiment in very many different ways when it comes to OKRs. So any final words, Chancel, before we close it off with feedback and outlook?
I wanted to say, and this is why we called it Reshape the Future of OKRs, this group and these events, because this is all about, right? There are some anti-patterns around OKRs going on, and they are getting bigger and bigger because now bigger organizations and some unexperienced consultancies are starting offering OKRs. So we need to avoid it because it's a great, powerful tool if applied well. So we need to take care of that, use it carefully to make great things with OKRs. I feel very happy that my slides, my approach with strategic theme OKRs resonated so well with you all. I see my slides copied in the sessions. Of course, feel free to use it if you name my name, if you mention my name in social media or whatsoever. If you use it in your slides, give your appreciation by naming us if you use our material in some case. And thank you for joining the event. It was great seeing so many people, new people also this time. So it was a great event. Thanks for that.
Yes, and here at the end of the the Miro board, we also have the outlook for the upcoming events. As you can see, we had a planning session a couple of weeks ago where we looked through our calendars and we wanted to make sure that we've got one coming up every month. So we actually pre-booked slots until the end of the year because that's kind of how it works best for us right now. So to kind of serve the community well. So in June, we're going to deep dive more into the topic that Chancel just shared, the architecture. In July, we're going to kind of move a little beyond the typical business KPIs and talk about how to use OKRs for development and sustainability and continue that discussion, OKRs beyond business after the summer break, even in September. So feel free to, join our little group where we always post the latest events and the links and everything else. And also feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions afterwards. You find a little more info about us here at the end as well. And if you have any additional feedback that you want to share, please feel free to put that in the board as well. We've got a final question, Richard.
Yes, one question about the time slots. So it probably works good for you, those time slots. My question just is, half of the weeks I'm always the caretaker for getting my kid from Kita. So I always struggle with the 4:30, 6 p.m. time. And then I'm always sad that I cannot join your cool OKR events. This isn't probably something you have never heard before, and you do it at that time slot for a good reason, right?
Well, I guess a time slot, we had that discussion, we have it every time, and it's just kind of, there is no good solution for that, right?
Yeah,
if you want to cover more time zones, you get into trouble. If you want to try to do it in the morning, everyone is like, but we've got our check-ins, we've got our routines, like there is no way I can participate in something like that before lunch. Then you do it over lunch. People are like, I don't have a fixed lunch break. That doesn't work at all because I have to travel somewhere now that I'm in home office. But I think what we can take though from your comment is maybe think about if we at least spice it up in one or two meetings to give you a chance to attend them, or maybe have parts of them recorded or something. Let's maybe take a little, circle back on that if we can maybe offer some alternatives at least for people like you.
Leave your favorite times in the Miro board so we can have the tendency, at least for the participants that are here today.
Oh yeah, and I love your suggestion, Luca. Midnight CEST, then we can have another Halloween theme-based thing, right?
Yeah. Every time when the kids are at Kita or asleep, that works perfectly.
But thanks a lot for your feedback. Yeah, we'll definitely consider that again, Richard. All right, then thanks a lot, everyone, for sharing the space and time with us. Wish you a wonderful either morning continuation of your day or a good night of sleep or a good afternoon here in Central Europe, and hope to see you all again very, very soon.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining. See you in the next meetup.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for everything. Bye-bye.